The Apple Tree, a Tuscan folk tale, is from C.G. Leland's Etruscan Roman Remains, 1892. From the World's Greatest Folktales, collected, arranged, and edited by James R. Faustian. In folk literature, there may be no more common theme than the husband and wife who desire but cannot have children. After their appeals to God or saints, or sacrifices and offerings to the poor go unrewarded, they may seek aid from the trickster, magician, or even the devil himself. Many a Faustian bargain is made, even promising the child to the being who seemed to deliver it. Such tales illustrate the many strange notions people once held about the conception and even birth of children. And now, our story. Once there was a beautiful lady who married a wealthy and handsome lord, and the great desire of his heart was to have an heir. But as his wife bore no children, he became almost mad with disappointment and rage, threatening her with the worst ill usage and torture unless she became a mother. And she spent all her time in prayer and all her money on the poor, but in vain. Then her husband hated her altogether and took a maidservant in her place. And finding her one day giving a piece of bread to some poor person, he had her hands cut off so that she could no more give alms. And she lived among the lowest servants in great distress. One day there came to the castle a friar, who begged for something in charity of her, and she replied that she had nothing to give, and that if she had aught, she could not give it, being without hands. When he heard her story, he looked a long time at her in silence, considering her extreme misery and goodness. Then he told her to embrace an apple tree in the garden and say, "Apple tree, fair apple tree, with my love I come to thee. I would be tonight in bed with my husband as when wed. May I so become a mother, grant this favor and another. Still I earnestly implore, may he love me as before." "And when you have done this," the friar continued, "take from the tree 2 apples and eat them, and go to your husband, and he will love you and take you to his bed, and you will in time bear 2 beautiful babies." And so it came to pass, and the husband bitterly regretted his cruelty and the loss of her hands, and she bore the 2 children. But the girl, who had been a servant and his mistress, persuaded him that his wife had been unfaithful, and that they were not his. Then he took a donkey. On it were 2 panniers, and he put a babe into each, and sat her in the middle, and bade her ride away. So she rode on in utter grief and sorrow, hardly able with her stumps of arms to manage the children or to drive. But at last she came to a well and stooped to drink. And lo, as soon as she did this, her hands grew again, for it was the fountain which renews youth and life. Then her heart grew light, for she felt that fortune had not left her. And indeed all went well, for she came to a castle where no one was to be seen. And she entered and found food on the tables, and wine, and all she required everywhere. And when she and the children had eaten, at the next meal there was food again. Now this castle belonged to fairies, who, seeing her there, pitied her and cared for her in this manner. And considering her case, they sent a dream to her husband. And the dream came to him by night, and told him all the truth, how his wife had been true to him, and how evilly he had done. Then he rode forth and sought far for the castle till he found it. And he took her and the children home. And as they came near the gate, they saw before it a statue, which had never been there. Now the wicked servant had said, "May I be turned to stone, if this be not true, which I have said of thy wife." And the words were remembered by the fairies, for they hear all things. And the statue was the figure of the girl turned to stone. But the wife and the husband lived together happily ever after.